This recording is specific to the role of a student for the dual enrollment system. Before a student can request a voucher, they must first request a student account. They can do so by clicking the Request Student Account button. The student will be prompted to enter information indicating their first and last name, their date of birth, gender, race. If the student is not at least 14 years old, the system will not allow them to request an account. They will enter their email and password. Keep in mind, they will need to keep this password handy as they're going to need it when they do log into the system for the first time. They will go ahead and enter student account request questions and what their current plans are after high school. The student will then go ahead and click the Submit Request button. If their request is approved or denied by the secondary school coordinator, the student will receive an email letting them know either way. If the request is approved, the student will receive an email with their login information, letting them know the specific information they will need to access the system. For example, this email here shows that the student will have their first and last name, a reminder that the password they chose when they first requested the account is needed, the link to getting into their site, and this verification PIN. The first time a student logs in, they will be prompted to enter this verification PIN. If they forget the verification PIN, they can let their secondary school coordinator know, and they are able to resend the PIN to the student. Now let's head over and log in as a student. This is not the first time the student has logged in, so we will not be prompted to answer questions. We will simply be guided to our first window here, which is where we have to enter profile information. Before a student can request a voucher, they do need to enter additional fields that are required. They will click the Edit Profile button in the corner, and in the pop-up window, information from their account request will populate, as well as additional new fields for entry. The student could use the physical address lookup if they want to allow the system to track their location and add their address automatically, or they can simply enter that field in the required section. Anything in red is required. For their mailing address, they can do the same thing here, where the system can look up their address, or they can click that the mailing address is the same as the physical address, which will populate those fields that were required with the information entered above for the physical address. The student must then select the program they are participating in. If they click Fast Forward, they'll have to enter their CTE center and their qualifying scores. If they enter dual enrollment, they will need to enter if dual enrollment is contained within their PLP. If they select no, that dual enrollment is not contained in their PLP, they will not be able to move forward with the voucher request process. They will indicate if they are a Vermont resident. This is another requirement in order to take a dual enrollment or fast forward course. Their tentative plans for after graduating, their projected date for graduation, projected year. For the projected date, this is an important field because when the student enters it, an account inactivation date will automatically populate. Students' accounts will deactivate 1 year after they graduate. The student will then have to indicate if they've completed grade 10 and where they fit within the options presented. If you have received your high school diploma, you will not be eligible, so we'll indicate no. And if they're enrolled in a Vermont public school, and then the Save button is visible. The student will click Save and their profile will populate with the information. To change their password at any point, students can click on Change Password. From here, students will head to the Voucher Request button to begin the voucher request process. If a student had previously requested a voucher, that would populate in this first panel, letting them know that they've already requested a voucher. If the student had already submitted for the maximum number of vouchers allowed, such as for 2 dual enrollment vouchers, the system would tell them up top that they are not eligible to submit for an additional voucher. Given that this student, Natalie, has not submitted for any vouchers yet, we will go ahead and begin with our first tile of household information. The student would go through and indicate the parent guardian number 1 and parent guardian number 2 if applicable, using the drop-down options. Their range of family household income, not counting themselves, the number of people in their household, not counting themselves, the number in their household are currently attending college, if they have any siblings who took a college class while in high school, if their siblings or themselves receive free and reduced lunch, and if they will incur out-of-pocket expenses as part of the dual enrollment course. The Save and Continue button is now visible for them to select, and it will populate the next tile in the process, which is where they enter voucher information. The student will enter the specific voucher or ticket type. We'll select dual enrollment. If they intend to attend a tech center, we'll select no. If they select yes, they do have to complete additional fields on the other side. And did they participate in a high school completion program? If they select yes, they will have to indicate the Adult Education Center, but we'll go ahead and select no and click Save. The student must agree to the terms and conditions by indicating so with this checkbox and click I accept. They will now be populated over to the course search tile. They will go ahead and select the location, and they could enter additional fields if desired, and click to filter results. The courses available based on the filter criteria will populate below. Students should make note of this drop date field, as if they choose a course after the drop date, that voucher or ticket will count against them. It will count as used. If a student drops a course before the drop date, they will be able to use that voucher or ticket again. So we will select a course using the radio button options and click Save and Continue. If the student had a specific course in mind they were looking for, they could use the search button up top. We'll go ahead and click Save and Continue. The next tile is required for students and is new functionality. Students will need to enter the PLP questions directly into the system. So our first question here is participation in this flexible pathway experience part of their PLP? If the student selects no, they will not be able to move forward with the voucher request. When the student selects yes, they will have to indicate using the checkboxes available how the flexible pathway experience will support their learning or personal goals outlined in their PLP. They can make one or multiple selections, but with each selection they make, there is a new text box that appears for them. We'll select secondary only and we'll enter some information. Okay, the student will then go ahead and indicate how this flexible pathway experience aligns with their future interests after high school. They can make one or multiple selections, but once again, if they do make multiple selections, they do have multiple text boxes to fill out. The last question is also required. What experiences have you had that make you think you are ready for this flexible pathway? The student will then be able to click Save and Continue once each of the required fields are complete. If the student intended on putting multiple paragraphs or quite a bit of information in the text box, they would have the option to click on the two lines and drag to expand the panels. They could do that throughout the system. But assuming there isn't too much information, they will go ahead and click Save and Continue. Next, they will indicate their approving organization contact, as their approving organization is their high school, which automatically populates for them. And they can then click Submit Voucher or Ticket Request. The pop-up window will let them know that their voucher has been submitted, and they will be brought back to their voucher request panels. This will show that the previous voucher was requested. It is in the status of requested. So at this time, the secondary school coordinator would go into the system once they've received an email letting them know that a student at their school had requested a voucher. They would go in and approve or deny the voucher. If the secondary school coordinator is denying the request, they will select from the denial option so the student is aware why their request was denied. The student will then receive an email letting them know if their request for the voucher or ticket has been approved or denied. The status will also update to reflect the result. When the student goes through to request their second voucher or additional vouchers or tickets, the household information tile will remain. They can make updates if necessary, but they will need to walk through the other three tiles to complete the required information. Their personalized learning plan responses will populate for their vouchers moving forward. They can update the information or they will not need to. If they don't have to, it will automatically populate for them from the first time they submitted for a voucher or ticket. The next tab for students is the student transfer request. This is used if a student is transferring from one high school to another. The student would need to initiate the transfer request by clicking on the Student Transfer Request button. Their current school would populate, and they would select their transferred school. They can then click Submit Request. Upon clicking Submit Request, the secondary school coordinator at their current school and at their transferred school will receive an email letting them know that a student has submitted a transfer request. If the student did in fact transfer, the secondary school coordinator at their current school will go into the system and update the student's school in the Edit Profile section. As a student, the change that would be noticed is under the Student Profile tab, and it would simply be under Edit Profile, School. As you can see, as a student, I'm not able to do anything with this drop-down option, but if the secondary school coordinator approves my transfer request, this school will update to the requested school. The students also have access to their Resources tab, which will provide them with valuable information as they are working through the system. They do want to be sure to click this Log Out button when they have finished to securely log out of the system. The next time a student logs in, they will be back to that Your Profile page once again, where they can make updates or submit for additional vouchers if necessary. That concludes the demonstration of the system from the student's perspective.